Welcome back to TBI Analytics podcast. I have the distinct pleasure of sitting here with Brian Mason of Gomez Trial Attorneys. He's a partner here, and we're in San Diego at this beautiful law firm that he has, and I have the pleasure of doing a podcast, your first podcast, right?
My very first podcast, yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited to do this and to get into this because I just learned a few weeks ago when I was down here for an event that Brian did very well for his clients on a couple of cases in the past where neuro-advanced brain imaging we were using to help determine the diagnosis for these patients as well as getting them on the treatment path to recover. And I wanted to get into that and ask you a little bit more and help our audience understand, coming from an attorney's point of view, when it comes to these TBI cases that are pretty complex and difficult, how do you go about it? And what did you do almost 5 years ago when you came onto a Zoom call that we were doing about brain injury? We weren't doing it, but the call was about TBI. And I know that we were on there promoting what we are doing in advanced imaging at the time. And so tell me a little bit more about where you were at that time and your struggle and how you found us.
Yeah, thank you again for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And for all your help on these cases that turned out very well for our clients.
Wonderful.
It was 2020, and you were doing one of the first Zoom continuing education classes with some lawyer, I don't even remember who it was, that I happened to log into because there was no court. And
I believe it was even Gary Dordick that was putting out something, or
it could have been, I can't remember.
Yeah, in any event.
But what caught my attention was your presentation about advanced imaging. And at the time, I was a solo practitioner. I wasn't with Gomez Trial Attorneys and the resources we have here. And thankfully for my clients and I think COVID slowed everything down and allowed us to take our time on those cases and really get the proper imaging that we needed. Because prior to COVID, the courts were really pushing cases to trial within 12 months, which is something we normally like. But
of course,
in that instance, it really helped me to slow things down and allow me to meet you and get our clients the advanced brain imaging they needed at that time.
Because I know we were, trying to decide how bad these people were injured, right? I mean, there was one thing to say maybe they were brain injured, but you were needing to get more advanced imaging done. And tell me about their treatment path up until the point that you found out about us.
Yeah, so both of my clients were in very similar situations in that they were both young. One was a 15-year-old girl at the time of her injury. The other one was a 17-year-old male at the time of his injury. So both very young. Both had treated only through insurance and through their regular healthcare plans, and they were both getting good treatment, but they both had significant brain injuries and concussion symptoms that were ongoing and that they were not recovering from. But they'd both had the regular course of treatment that you'll get through your primary care, including a regular brain MRI. And they both turned out normal. Both the brain MRIs turned out normal. And so you had these situations where these young people are suffering significant symptoms and the brain MRI is showing normal. And so the establishment medical community, at that point when the brain MRI is normal, it's very hard to get advanced treatment or advanced imaging. They just keep telling you to come back every 8 weeks. Oh, it should be okay. It should go away.
Right. And at this point, it's really because it's the standard of care. They don't know any different, right? Some of these providers just don't understand or even know that there is advanced imaging out there that can get to the degree of just how bad maybe they are. And that is because a standard brain MRI is only measuring the outside structure of that brain, right? So when we need to analyze the gray and white matter and be able to pull that data, because that's where the person's injured, that's where we have to turn to advanced brain imaging that's encompassed of multiple sequence of a brain MRI, That's not just showing one aspect of it, right?
Yeah, and I don't think most hospitals or clinics they don't even have the ability to get these images.
100%.
They don't have the machines.
Right. And unfortunately, I sometimes say this on cases is that if you are, well, in just general, if you're injured in a car wreck or you're brain injured somehow, like that, from a personal injury event, it's almost like what I'm trying to say is if you are injured from a brain injury, well, it's hopeful that you are doing it by a personal injury event, because that's the only way you're going to get to the recovery, if you will, because your standard care is not going to get you that level of treatment.
Right.
And that's what it's like.
It's a sad state, but that's the way it is. You're not going to get this imaging through normal healthcare.
You just won't. So what do you do when you come across a situation like that, like you did? And I commend you, because I come across many attorneys who are feeling limited by being a solo practitioner and not having the funds to be able to go outside and get this type of imaging when their clients absolutely need it. And so what do? We have to turn to other resources that are out there that maybe will hold a lien to do this type of work, or there's funding options out there that are helping to get these plaintiffs the treatment that they deserve, correct? So at the end of the day, that's what we're looking to do here. I mean, obviously there is a dollar amount that we're going for to help their recovery and to get them their future care. But at the end of the day, if I were in an accident like that, if I had a brain injury, I would want to know, regardless of how much money I'm going to make on this or get from the outcome of it, that what is my future going to tell me? Because that's the most important thing. I don't care how much money I have. How am I going to survive? And right? And how am I going to live in a normal life? Or at least somewhat of a normal life, or try to go back to before that injury.
Yeah, I will say at the time being a solo practitioner, it was a little intimidating because this isn't inexpensive and insurance doesn't cover it. I had to go through
you also had the challenge of it being even recognized in court, and we can get to that.
Yeah, we can get to that too, that there's a fear of, is this advanced technology going to pass Cali-Fry standards or whatever the standard may be in your state related to the advanced science? Is it even something that's recognized by most people? And the defense will almost always file motions in limine to exclude it, which I dealt with in both of these trials that we can get into.
Absolutely. And then and let's go into a little bit more of what happened to your clients. I mean, you had two of them that utilized this type of imaging and secured a good outcome for them and helped them to discover what treatment they needed. Tell us a little more.
Both of them involved falls. One during a baseball game and one during PE class in high school. And both of them struck their head. And both had, it's odd to me how similar the cases were with regard to the injuries to these young people.
Wow.
And both of them were in scenarios where whether or not there was a loss of consciousness is unknown. Mm-hmm. If there was, it was very, very minimal, a few seconds maybe. We had the Glasgow Coma score, 15, so perfect score for both. The standard defenses, and I used to work on the defense side, so I understand what they're really going to say. Yeah, mm-hmm. Both of them have those things. In theory, if you're on the defense side, or if you know what they're going to say, it's something you might worry about, but it's really not anything to worry about. The Glasgow Coma score is not meant for. It's meant for triage. It's not meant to say someone doesn't have a concussion or brain injury. Right. But we had those issues in both cases, and in both cases. Most of the time, and I think statistically it's in the 80 or 90% or above, most people that have a single concussion event without some sort of secondary impact will recover from that concussion, statistically. And that's usually the big defense in these cases, is that statistically most people recover, but all of the defense neurologists will admit that some people don't. And I don't think that the science has caught up to that yet, and as far as understanding why some people don't. There's pre-existing conditions that can affect it. Everybody's a little bit different.
Yep, everybody's wired differently.
Yeah.
Even if getting an injury to the back or even an orthopedic injury, people even recover from that differently.
Right.
And so when it comes to the brain, where we've got neurons firing and wiring all over the place, that is definitely not going to be your cookie cutter. But it's interesting, like you said, that both of these brain injuries were very similar in their, moderation.
And I think both clients face the same battle with their healthcare providers, and that the healthcare providers were all good. They all wanted to help. But brain injuries, until you have this advanced imaging, are normally invisible injuries.
Right.
Unless you have a brain bleed on a CT scan in the emergency room, which is very rare. We just don't see that very often. You get diagnosed with a mild traumatic brain injury and / concussion, and it's expected to resolve in 4 to 8 weeks, maybe less. And so without something on a CT scan or an MRI, you really just there's not a lot of treatment they're going to give you, and you need the advanced imaging.
And you just nailed it on the head. It's the treatment that we are trying to get for these people and to get them into that care. And how do you treat these people when you don't know what's going on? And so that's the beautiful thing when it comes to this advanced imaging, is that we are able to get them on that path of treatment and to know what it is that they do need. Because if you don't get to that, now you've got somebody out there who is brain injured being told that they're not.
Right.
And
people are telling them you should be better. And you start to feel a little bit crazy. You start to feel like maybe my doctors don't believe me because they're not really, because the imaging doesn't show them anything. They're just telling me I should be better, but I'm not better. And it's incredibly difficult for these people to deal with that.
And you were dealing with a couple of people that are under, I think, even 20 or so.
Yeah, they were
right?
both under 18.
Yes.
Yeah.
So not only could they, usually you have a better recovery when you're younger, right? Our bodies know how to heal quicker. And so that's also probably something that they were thinking would happen is, well, they're young,
Right.
their brains will be better.
They'll be fine. Right.
It's just, a phase that they go through or whatever, name it, whatever. But you saw that these people were indeed still exhibiting signs of traumatic brain injury, and you continued to pursue them getting that extra help and that extra care. So
yeah, I will say, not to interrupt, but no. I think what they also had in common was luckily for each of these kids, they both had parents that were adamant that something's not right with my child. Somebody's got to listen to me, and really pushing for more, and that's how they ended up coming to me, because they weren't getting that through their regular providers, even though they knew there was something off. And I know you were there when we did the Zoom call with the neuroradiologist.
Yes. Was this the patient, the client that you were like the fifth attorney they came to because nobody would take their case?
One of them, yeah, I was the sixth attorney. Nobody wanted the case. They didn't think it was winnable.
Incredible. And they ultimately was able to get a verdict?
Both. One was a 7-figure settlement. The other one was a 7-figure verdict.
Wow, incredible. And at the time, these people, when they first were going after a claim, they weren't even listening.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
So yes. So tell us a little bit. Okay, we were talking about the Zoom call. So tell us what happened on that.
So this is really what sold me on the technology, because I don't know. I'm not a neuroradiologist. I'm not a doctor. Right. So I'm hoping that this stuff works and is helpful. But what really sold me was we had our client, the 15-year-old girl, go through the advanced brain imaging. After it all got processed and after the neuroradiologist had an opportunity to review it, we set up a Zoom call with me and you and the neuroradiologist and the parents. And he went through and showed us what he found on the advanced imaging.
Oh, and I remember he didn't have any prior knowledge of what happened.
Right. That's what was so impressive.
He didn't even know what happened.
He didn't have any medical records.
All he knew is that he's looking at this for traumatic brain injury.
Right. We didn't give him, I had never spoken to him. I'd never emailed him. I didn't tell him. None of us told him what happened to the girl.
I didn't.
Yeah, nobody gave him medical records for him to read what her symptoms were. It was completely blind. He only looked at the imaging. And then he pulled it up on the Zoom and showed us what he was seeing. And he said, based on what I'm seeing, I would expect her to be exhibiting symptoms of vertigo, dizziness, headaches, ringing in her ears, tinnitus. And I remember her mom crying and saying, just so relieved that we knew this was what was happening with her, and we knew there was a reason, but nobody would believe us or nobody would help us. And here he's just saying exactly what he's seeing, and now we know it's confirmed, and we can now start to help her with vision therapy and vestibular therapy and different types of therapy that helped her.
We literally witnessed that moment where mom and dad were just in tears that somebody finally understood what was going on with their daughter.
Right.
It's just nuts.
It was incredible.
Yeah. What a thing to be a part of, and so great to be here to share that story. And so that was the young girl that was injured. And what about the other one? What happened with that one?
The other one was similar. It ended with the case ended with the settlement, but it was similar in that the advanced imaging showed exactly where the injury was within the brain, and he was able to get additional treatment as well that was helpful because of that. And it just helps set the treatment path as to what exactly they need to help them. And they're both still, the last time I spoke with both of them, they were still dealing with symptoms. It's not something that cured them or anything. It doesn't go away, but at least they can pinpoint what the issue is and work on it and understand it.
And help with those coping measures now.
Right.
So I'm sure TBI patients get into a coping mechanism. If they don't have the treatment, then they're going to turn to other outlets, and some are dangerous, right? So thank God he had parents that really fought for them. And I know the injury of the boy was induced because of negligence to put him back in a game when he was actually hurt. So not taking that standard of care, really, that was a tough case, I know.
That was a tough case. It was a collision on a baseball field. And I think the reason all the prior attorneys had rejected it was the idea that there's some assumption of the risk when you're playing sports. But the case was against the team for not following California concussion protocol for minors. That was that's what the case ended up being about.
And we were able to show in advanced imaging that level of injury that did take place during that collision.
Yeah. And I actually, when I was going through my records today, I forgot to tell you that I had used this imaging in a third case that actually went to trial 6 months ago or so.
Oh, wow.
So there's 3 examples of cases, the 2 trials, 1 settlement, all of them with very good outcomes.
My God,
and
that's awesome.
So twice I've had Dr. Chowdhury, the neuroradiologist, testify in trial about the different imaging. And it's just incredible how a regular MRI only gets you 285 slices and pictures of the brain.
Right.
And this advanced imaging has multiple types of imaging, so then you see the brain at different levels. And I want to say it's around 3,500 images.
Yes, it was in the thousands. That's what I was told that they were doing, and that we are doing in TBI analytics. We're taking slices of the brain at every millimeter, if you will. Yeah. And your standard brain MRI is taking every 2 to 5 millimeters, depending on their calibration. Then what are they comparing these people to? What's the database that we're going against? Right. And then it becomes just the expert's opinion when you're based on just data that's subjective. So that's what's so great about these advanced slices, if you will, the sequences that we're pulling, because not only are we just measuring that one area of the brain, now we're differential diagnosis, because we want to attack all the different ways that somebody would be brain injured. Right. It could be disease related, it could be from getting older, it could be a number of things, right? So we want to make sure that we are attacking all aspects of why this person could be brain injured and actually attribute it to that injury, that incident that took place.
Yeah, and they're able to do that with this advanced technology. They can say, oh, this is age-related, this is Alzheimer's potentially related, this is from trauma, this is an acute injury. They're able to differentiate all those different things.
So a big objection that I get when I'm sharing this information with other attorneys is their hesitancy to use it because it's not so prevalent and used, right? We're living in modern technology where these types of technology comes up from research, but now reaches the clinical aspect, which this imaging isn't now in. But of course, defense side is going to want to say, it's research-based, right? So tell us about your journey in getting this into the court system.
Yeah, the last 2 trials where I've used this advanced imaging, we did face a motion to eliminate to exclude it on the basis that it was for research purposes only. There weren't enough studies to show that it's being used in the scientific community. And we prevailed on both of those, in both of those trials, obviously. But the defense will say that, but it's very easy to find research papers, and the neuroradiologist that you're working with can help you sign declarations and whatnot about how useful it is. In our last trial, the defense radiologist, even though the defense filed a motion to exclude it on the basis that it's not used for clinical diagnosis, they specifically attacked DTI. And I know the advanced imaging has DTI and SWI and a number of different types of sequence. Yeah. They specifically attacked the DTI, claiming it was research-based only. But we were able to oppose the motion, showing that there's been, I want to say, over 15,000 papers written in the last 20 years, because it's been around a while.
Yeah.
And I think at the beginning, that might have been a true argument. And they've been copying and pasting that same argument since 2006, and it's not valid anymore. And in fact, in our last trial, the defense neuroradiology expert was an author on a research paper that actually concluded that DTI can be used for clinical correlation of symptoms in a mild traumatic brain injury. And so it flew right in the face of everything they were arguing for their motion. So I don't have any fear that this would not come in, and I think if for some reason it was excluded, I believe that would be overturned on appeal. I don't think there's any valid basis to exclude it at this point. There's too many papers out there. There's too many people that use it.
Yeah, that's what my advice to these attorneys that are hesitant is I've been now working on, I don't know how many of them have gone to trial, but I have had a hand in almost probably 700 cases, if you will. And I don't hear about these cases not making it to court.
Yeah, you would hear.
You would
for
hear.
sure, you would hear. They get into before the jury. Now, with that being said, the defense will have their own defense expert who will, of course, say it's not valid or it's research-based, but I invite them to do that because most of the ones that say that literally have been involved in research papers saying the opposite. And so if you just do some research on the defense doctor, it's a pretty easy cross-examination.
That's wonderful. I love hearing that. Because the more tools that we can give these people that are out there just walking aimlessly around looking for that help, the better. And so please, if you're listening, don't hesitate when you have a client that is exhibiting these types of symptoms of TBI, and you even have lay witnesses, maybe family members that are, like you said, they were coming to you going, I don't believe what these doctors are saying, it's just, it can't be. That's really the end of the day. What we're hoping to do is to get them on that path. And so 3 now, I'm so happy for those people. That is incredible.
Yeah, and we've used it a number of other times, but those 3 are the ones that really stand out to me, especially because 2 of them went to trial, and then one of them was more difficult. But I'm also happy to share any documents with anyone. If like people that work with you, if they tell you the defense is trying to exclude it, if they want to see our oppositions to that.
I love that.
I don't want any rulings out there anywhere, and and
Yeah.
that exclude it. So I'm happy to help with
Let's
any of
definitely
that.
help this, because yeah, the more united we are on this, the better for everyone. And so, it definitely comes down to that advanced imaging. It definitely comes down to that neuroradiologist that you're working with. The great thing is we now have a new, company that since you've worked with me on it, anything, and this level of imaging is even more advanced than what I've even seen. And so, and why I say that is because of the continuous research that goes on, the continuous database collection, so that we can do an age and gender match. I mean, the more specific we can get, the better. And so we're fighting the fight over here by working with those software companies that are doing that research, and being able to support this community of TBI. It's just been a thrill, really, and it's so fun to, of course, come together like this, and not even know what 4 years later, practically, I'm finding out that what we did back then is did work. So.
Yeah, it was very, very, very helpful to all three of the cases.
Yeah, so thank you with that. Thank you for your determination and persecution to get these people the justice they deserve, and to get the treatment for the rest of their life. So amazing stuff. So I want to know, how did you go from having your own solo practice to now working with as a partner at the Gomez Trial firm here?
Yeah, I've been, gosh, I think this is my 16th or 17th year practicing.
Yeah.
And the first 6 or so, I was doing almost exclusively criminal defense. And then I
So you
switched
saw
to...
the courtroom a lot.
Yeah, saw the courtroom a lot of criminal trials. And then I switched to, I wanted to get into civil plaintiff.
Mm-hmm.
And I went the defense route first. And so I worked as in-house counsel for Mercury Insurance for a number of years and tried a number of cases on their behalf on the defense side, which is very helpful as far as understanding the way the other side looks at things, and what I think they're going to argue, and just to be able to see both sides. I think it's been very helpful for me on the plaintiff side.
Yeah.
And so I left Mercury and joined a firm for a while, and then I ended up going out on my own, and then was introduced to John Gomez by a friend of mine, and John and I hit it off, and he offered to bring me in, and I brought those cases with me.
Mm-hmm.
And that was 2.5 years ago, and about 6 months ago he named me a partner, and it's been a really good collaboration. I love working with John and the resources we have here, and just his vast knowledge of the law and of trials. It's been incredible.
That's amazing. What a good fit. I mean, you bring so much knowledge and information to the team. I'm sure that he's delighted to have you. And so it's great to see where you're headed and keep on going, and you're battling for your clients. So definitely, if you've been hurt in an accident out there or some kind of incident that's causing you grief, Brian Mason here in San Diego at the Gomez Trial Attorneys is your man for sure. He will fight for you. You can tell.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I have a whole team here we have 4 attorneys on my team. I have 2 paralegals, a legal assistant, and then I have a registered nurse who works with me part-time that helps understand the medical issues. We do some medical malpractice as well, and so she's very helpful for that. But also just having somebody with that medical knowledge on my team, we really fight on these difficult injury cases with complex medical issues.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And I bet the learning doesn't stop. You are always learning.
Yeah, no, that's what makes it fun, is that there's always something new. There's always a different wrinkle or aspect of a case or an injury. I only wish that I had been more interested in science and anatomy and physiology back when I was in school. But I'm learning now, so it's fun.
Yeah, no, you feel like, I mean, I've been on this side of it too. You feel like you're a doctor and a lawyer and all in the one, but being able to have that experience and knowledge is incredible, to be able to see it from both sides, and then you have the defense side as well with the criminal defense background, so, and the defense side of personal injury. So
yeah, it's been a long ride, but long way to go.
you needed all of those avenues to get you right where you are right now.
Yeah, I think so.
Hope you are enjoying this podcast episode. You can contact us at tbianalytics.org.
One of the other things I would tell attorneys that are hesitant on whether or not they want to go forward with advanced imaging is that if your case does go to trial, I've tried multiple mild traumatic brain injury cases, some without advanced imaging and without anything on an MRI scan, and then these last two with the advanced imaging. And so from a juror's perspective, a lot of juries don't, they expect to see something on an MRI.
Yeah, because we have the CSI.
Yeah. From what they see on TV and just what they're thinking, they're expecting you to be able to show them the injury. And so when you go into trial on a mild traumatic brain injury, you have a client who has an invisible injury and they look fine. They walk in the room, they speak normally, they don't look injured, even though they are. And that's a very difficult thing for the jurors to really understand because that's just not what they're expecting. And right. So when you have the advanced imaging and you have that neuroradiologist come testify and put together a PowerPoint for the jury, and I'll invite them to come down into the well of the courtroom and teach the jury. And we don't even really do a direct exam. We just let them teach and point the different images and really give a course on advanced imaging and what that radiologist found in the plaintiff's brain. And it's so powerful. It's so much more powerful than going in there and saying, I promise she's, he or she is hurt, even though you can't see it, and even though the MRI is negative. It's a game changer if you take your case to trial.
100%. And honestly, that's why I became so passionate about mild traumatic brain injury in my career path, is because I started by working for visual media companies that did the animations and the graphics for trial. And so I was very keen on helping these people tell the story of their case so that they could go before a jury. And so I was working with many litigators during this time, and the pain that I saw that they would have is on those cases that were mild TBI, where they didn't have a brain MRI to be able to show what's going on. How do we convey an invisible injury without visuals?
Right.
That was really the hard aspect of my job in that light. And so when I was working with a funding company that was helping to provide these types of treatments on a lien, they told me, we really want to help those that have traumatic brain injury, but in order to do so, you really have to ensure the case that they're funding by getting the right brain MRI so that we can absolutely have that evidence to support that diagnosis. And they said, you can't just depend on your standard brain MRI though, because that's not going to show anything. So we have to call this advanced imaging company. And that's how I discovered this whole world of DTI and multiple sequences of a brain MRI that actually do measure that area. And I was fascinated because of that time before, seeing that pain in all of these people, and this was across the nation, every state has this issue. And then when that happened, where I was working on this case that went before a federal court, and of course defense didn't want to allow it in, and they said it was research-based. It was mad science, I think is what they called it. And I was just cheering it on because I was hoping that, me getting this advanced imaging, helping to get this on the case and helping this client, that it would go through. And sure enough, they won and they got to verdict. And that's when I knew this was the smoking gun, if you will, on these mild TBI cases. And this is the visual that we've been looking for. When you're able to identify, now some technology out there was only able to identify at the time, I think we were even using technology that was identifying 10 bundle tracks of the fiber tracks of the brain. But now the technology that we're working with, the TBI Analytics, has on the DTI a 33 measured bundle tracks. So when any of those out of the 33 are off, and damaged, that's going to show up in the reporting. It's not going to report on the ones that aren't. It's only going to report on the ones that are. And to be able to visualize those data points into a tractography image, to be able to show it, that's where I knew, oh my gosh, this is the answer, because we can actually visually show it. And so it's interesting that you can actually put that into a whole confirmed story for me, because that's what my pain points were too.
Yeah, and I think that it's important to keep this going, because it really needs to be technology that the general public gets to use. That's the thing that's really frustrating to me, is that when you talk to families and work with traumatic brain injury patients and you talk to their families, it really is a devastating injury. And not to get too personal, but I have, my mom suffered from a brain tumor, which is different. It's not a traumatic brain injury, but any injury to the brain, anything that changes the brain, can completely change a person. It changes their personality, their memories, it affects your entire body. I mean, the two young kids I was talking about earlier, both of them ended up with blood pressure and heart issues and dysautonomia issues, and it can cause vision and hearing, and literally every part of your body is controlled by the brain, which is obvious, but you don't really think about it, how it can affect you to have diffuse axonal injury and shearing of these fibers that you're talking about, and what that can do to somebody, and how it can change them, and how hard that is for the patient and for their family. And so I would love it for this to just get out there and be part of regular health care. Yes.
And it would be a lot easier to help convey that they need this, in order to support their diagnosis, right? So, it is more than your average cost for standard brain MRI, of course, right? But there's a reason for that.
Right.
And it's valuable enough that it's, almost malpractice if you don't utilize this type of imaging when you know that they have these types of indicators for it. And so definitely that's my prayer every day, is that this gets out there more, that providers are even in the know, because they are also working with older standard of cares, and being able to introduce this into the personal injury arena has been a blessing, so that these people can get that care. And I know I mentioned it earlier, but it's so true when I say that if you are brain injured, it's hopeful that you have received that injury because of a negligent claim, and you can seek those resources, because otherwise you're going to have to go down a path of really, expensive treatment, or trying to figure out who even knows about this.
Yeah, you better have a lot of money to treat yourself, because your insurance company's not going to cover.
Exactly. And it's a shame. It's really a shame. But in the fact that it absolutely identifies and helps get these people treatment, why insurance wouldn't cover that is
that's a whole nother
beyond
topic,
me.
about
But
the
that is a whole
community standards and
we could be
healthcare
preaching
and
to the
insurance.
choir, right? Yeah.
I do a good amount of medical malpractice, and it is, I don't want to go off on another topic, but the medical establishment and pharmaceutical companies and the malpractice insurance companies really make things difficult. And it's not about patient care as much as it is about money.
It's all about money.
Yeah.
And let's talk about that. People always assume, they get that, that stigma that lawyers are just accident or emergency ambulance chasers, right?
Yeah.
For the money.
Right.
But that's not the case. When I first got into personal injury and I started working with attorneys, I would hear that, oh, I'm so sorry you're, doing that. Like, why? This is amazing work. And when you actually, link arms with these people and you see the kind of passion that they have because they're caring about these people and getting them the right help and treatment. Most of the people I would say that I've met in this space now almost 13 years are truly there because they do want to see their clients get better. Sure, is there money involved we all have to make our money
Right.
somehow. And some are paid better than others. But I think it's really what you really put into your practice and way you come across to a jury. If you are definitely caring and genuine about it, it will come across.
Yeah, and it's something that we bring up during voir dire, during jury selection.
Good.
I'll ask them to rate how many people here hate personal injury lawyers.
Right.
Who here hates frivolous lawsuits?
Right.
And of course, they'll all raise their hand. And I ask them, will you give me the opportunity to show you? Well, first I go through a little thing with them where I'll say, does everybody agree that in any profession there are good and bad? Even something as noble as being a teacher.
Sure.
We all had bad teachers.
Priests.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's
There's
bad sides of every profession.
Right.
And so, of course, there are ambulance chasing, personal injury attorneys, if that's what you want to call them.
Entrepreneurs.
That don't care about the clients. They're just trying
Yeah.
to turn money, right? I get that. They're out there. But I always ask the jury, will you give me the opportunity to show you that this is a righteous case? And that this case needs to be here in front of you, and they all say they will, and by the end they know we're real and legit, and we're there to help. And frankly, our industry is a check and balance of corporate power and corporate greed, because we're the ones, when you look through history of things like the cigarette litigation, or when there's like the water issues and people being poisoned, and there's health issues everywhere, and it's civil litigation that really is a check and balance on corporate greed, because otherwise who's going to stop them?
100%. It is the David and Goliath for sure.
Yeah, I have cases now. One of them is against one of the largest multi-billion-dollar strawberry companies in the world. And I'm representing a family that was involved in a crash with one of their trucks and I don't want to go down a long road of liability, but basically it's a shell game to avoid liability. And that's what you see often with big, large, multi-billion-dollar corporations, is that they own 50 or 60 or 70 subsidiary corporations, and they push liability off onto those. And in that particular case, it's the next trial I have coming up. My client was 20 weeks pregnant with twins at the time of her crash, and one of her twins died, and the other one was born extremely premature at 1.7 pounds, and he's permanently disabled. And we're going to go and try to hold this multi-billion-dollar company accountable and pay for the future care for this kid whose life is destroyed.
Yeah.
And that's, if people want to call that ambulance chasing, that's fine, because
Right.
we just got a case last week that's been in the news related to, I don't know if you saw this in the news, but the San Diego County Jail has a history of deaths of inmates. More deaths in the San Diego County Jail than any other jail in the state, even those with much higher populations. There's been audit reports, there's been warnings, and they do nothing about it. And I represent the wife of a man who was arrested for something he probably shouldn't have been, but whatever, they brought him in. No charges were ever filed, but he was a type 1 diabetic. He had a insulin pump with him. He told the jail and the staff that I'm going to run out of insulin at 8 a.m. tomorrow.
Oh my God, even told them.
His alarm was going off at 8 a.m. the next day. His wife was at the jail trying to get in, telling them he needs his insulin. I'm getting the alarms on my phone.
Oh my gosh.
And they ignored him for 19 hours and he died.
Oh my God.
And the medical examiner actually ruled it a homicide by the San Diego County Sheriff,
Wow.
deputies and medical staff. And so
Wow.
those are the kinds of things we do. I think we do very noble work here. And
that's where your criminal and PI
yeah,
side collide
that's
there.
going to be an interesting one for sure, taking
Yes.
depositions of those deputies and
Wow, I'm glad
the
they found
nursing
you.
staff, and finding out what really went, what really happened.
And this might open the can of worms as to what else is going on.
Yeah,
with the
something's
other
going on there. I mean, they're
people.
not taking care of people. I know that.
Sure. So they are even on notice, if you will.
Oh, yeah. They just settled a case for $15 million for almost the same thing, and they still let it happen.
Oh my.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Wow.
But it seems like if you don't have somebody filing lawsuits and trying to hold them accountable,
Right.
who's going to do it?
Who's going to do it?
Right.
And so, yes, right back to that point. If you can call you ambulance chasers,
Right.
that's definitely not what you're doing. And I'm grateful that you are doing what you're doing because, yeah, that's crazy. My God. And yes, so when it comes down to the providers out there, also about the whole greed and money, that's what they're basically doing. That's what we're fighting is these people that we are paying insurance to and, to keep us going. And yet may never even need that insurance. But when we do need it, we get tasked with so much red tape to have to go through. And I don't know how anybody would do it without an attorney.
I agree.
That's just, no. And why would you? Because at the end of the day, I don't know that everybody knows this, but when you're injured in a personal injury claim, that attorney is not paid unless you win. So, if they're chasing money, that's only because, they just are trying to get that for the person. And, the benefit is, yes, they get, compensated for their hard work in getting that justice that they deserve. So, well, good. I think we talked about that one well. And that point is definitely one that I'm always hearing. Yeah. And that's why we're here, is that you have to get that proper care outside of your own insurance. Do whatever you can. That's my recommendation, of course, is to, do what you can with the insurance that you're already getting. But should you come across something where you just feel you need to know more, well, there are experts out there that attorneys do know and have worked with that can help.
Yeah, and these are all board certified, like the neuroradiologists that will work with it, double board certified.
Right. John Hopkins
they all
trained.
work, exactly. Yeah, they're all very, very good.
Michael Rosenfeld on our team. And so, yes, very good. Awesome.
Hope you are enjoying this podcast episode. You can contact us at tbianalytics.org.
So what about work and life balance? Tell us a little bit about what you do outside of law that keeps you balanced. Family?
Yeah, I'm married for 16 years.
Wow.
Yeah, 3 kids.
Wonderful. That's
ages
great.
15, 13, and 9, almost 10 now.
Okay,
and that
busy
keeps us
man.
very busy. We actually, from a work-life balance perspective, I actually spent the month of August in Spain.
Wow, wonderful.
Yeah, John Gomez was very accommodating and gracious.
Wow.
And when we're getting some construction done at our house, and so I said, we got to be out of the house for a demo, and San Diego's so expensive. We're wondering, why should we rent a month here? Let's go somewhere else. So we went to Spain for a month, and I'm trying to learn Spanish, and I'm in classes, and so are my wife and kids, and so we chose a Spanish-speaking country and spent a month there. And I worked while we were there. I worked quite a bit, actually.
That's what's great, is you can work from pretty much anywhere.
Yeah, another not to keep mentioning benefits of COVID, but it changed the legal industry in such a good way. It forced an industry that didn't want to use technology to use technology, and now we can do things from anywhere.
Yes.
I took 4 depositions from Spain, and I worked the whole time, and I was 9 hours ahead, which was kind of nice because nobody was bothering me during the day.
I love being on the East Coast.
Yeah.
Yes, you're ahead of everybody.
Yeah, go to Spain and be 9 hours ahead, and then your whole day everyone's in bed, and you're not even no one can call or email you. Yeah, so a lot of my work-life balance comes with my kids are in a lot of sports, and so we do a lot of that. We're constantly at sporting events. I play a lot of basketball myself, and that's kind of
keep active.
Yeah, try to keep very active. My wife and I go running, and I've been really into hot yoga lately. So that's
now you're sparking my interest. Here we go.
Yeah, I'm addicted to it, I think.
Bikram style, like the hot yoga?
With core power yoga.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
a
like
yoga
105
6.
degrees or something. Yeah.
That's same.
It's amazing.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I truly believe every single person needs to experience hot yoga
Yeah,
because it doesn't just help the physique, it's fully a mental thing.
yeah,
And
very
then it
much.
just aligns everything. It's
It's so
amazing.
relaxing, and I also don't think I realized how maybe stiff and how much in pain I was before. Not that I'm in pain, but
No, but I get it.
now I'm like, oh, my back, I need to go to yoga.
Yes.
I'm addicted to it. I
Yes.
need to feel stretched, and
Yes.
it's amazing.
100%. Well, now you're going to make me
Yeah.
want to really get back into it on a daily. I was doing it, well, another benefit of COVID. So, I do believe that even when we think that, I believe in everything happens for a reason. And I also believe that even that reason at the time you might think is bad is actually something that's good. We just have to look at it from a different perspective.
Yeah.
But what it did do is really, I think, gave the world a better sense of like being in tune with family and connected and being able to have that work-life balance.
Yeah.
And so, yeah,
Absolutely.
for sure.
My wife and I talk about it a lot, that time period in 2020 when there was no school, no sports, no court or trial. We couldn't even go to restaurants. We're just home every night together with nowhere to be because we can't go anywhere. And it was frustrating at the beginning, but after a while I remember thinking it's kind of nice that we don't have anywhere to be. We can just relax and
Yeah. It
and
was
be
nice when you
home.
take away, it was like, wow, we don't have to be at a
We don't have to
conference.
rush
We don't have to
anywhere.
go anywhere. We don't have to go to court.
Right.
It actually was really a peaceful thing. And that's where I turned more to hot yoga than anything.
Yeah.
I had been taking the Hot 21 course like religiously every day, one for a year. And then 2020 hit, instead of going to the yoga studio, and because it's the same routine every time, now it's in my head. I can just do it myself. And so I turned my little shed in the backyard where I work out of, it's a little she shed, and it even has an AC unit in it. And
Nice.
I put little floor heaters in there and get it really hot. And I was just doing my own hot yoga in my
Wow.
little
I never thought
office.
about that. We turned our garage into a workout yoga room. Redid the floors and the walls and everything, but I never thought about putting heat in there.
Oh, yeah. It's
Yeah.
the best. Like, because how can you do it now
Right.
without it?
I know I can't anymore
I
without.
can't.
Yeah.
The first class, I think I had to leave halfway in and just like go to the bathroom and maybe almost puke. But
Once you get
once
used
you
to it,
get through
it's
it,
all good.
that's why it's such a mental. And, it's actually a moving meditation, is what it's called. And I've heard neuroradiologist Dr. Chaudhry being one of them, who has said the best treatments that you can give anybody or tell anybody for a TBI or any in general is to meditate. It's the one thing that every human should be doing.
Yeah.
And not everybody knows how to meditate.
Right.
Because what is meditation, right? That could be many different forms. But one major form is yoga, and hot yoga for that, because when you can turn your mind off of everything else, you can't even have a controlled thought other than keeping that form
Right.
and concentrating on not passing out. And really, it gets you in tune with your body. And then that's when you have those downloaded moments of
Right.
thoughts. And you're like, those are the best thoughts that you get. And then you're like, because you tuned it all out. You put all of the, stuff that we see and it's constantly getting at our face with every day. You're a lawyer, you have kids, you're married, you've got so much. There's so many thoughts that we can have. So when you can turn that off and
Yeah.
truly
For
concentrate
an hour
on
at a
you,
time, it's amazing.
it's amazing. So I highly recommend that. I'm so glad that you did that you do that.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So yes, I'd say you're doing a really good work-life balance.
I think so.
Yeah, it's
And
great.
it helps that I love the work. So even there'll be times where I log in and work from home at night when everybody's in bed, and I like the work, and so
Yeah.
it doesn't really feel like work.
Yeah. And to the audience that's listening in, and if you can't see us, you will know that Brian is not the most animated guy. yet he's very passionate about what he does. And so he's even joking and hoping that people won't be tuned out because of his monotone voice, but
Yeah.
he really is, I can feel it sitting right here in front of him. The vibe is real. Like, he really is excited about what he's doing.
It's funny because as I was telling you earlier, back when I did criminal defense work, I recorded some radio commercials, and the first take that we did, we listened to it, and it was the most boring thing I'd ever heard. And I'm like, how is this my voice? Do I talk that slowly?
Right. And we all cringe on our voices.
Oh,
anyway.
yeah.
But then
I felt like to just sound like a regular radio voice that wasn't incredibly slow and boring, I had to do the ads almost like a game show host, like
Yes.
super animated and almost feeling like I'm yelling into the mic and all this. And I don't think I've maintained that this time, so hopefully this isn't too boring for your
No,
listeners.
it's great. You know why? Because the topic and what we're talking about is so informative. If you're not listening, if you got to be listening to this because you have a lot of experience to share.
Hope you are enjoying this podcast episode. You can contact us at tbianalytics.org.
Yeah, so let's talk about sports injuries, TBI related injuries. In that we hear this all the time. Whether it's soccer, football, you name it, we're dealing with concussion related injuries out there.
I think that one thing that I'm planning on doing that's related to sports is the mother of the baseball player that was injured is a neuropsychologist.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so that was very helpful in getting him the treatment he needed. But her and I both have a passion related to brain injuries and getting the community awareness and getting people the knowledge they need. And one thing I learned during that case was about secondary impact syndrome and how devastating it is to children, especially anyone under the age of 18. But you don't hear about it a lot. A lot of people don't know what it is. But what you have is someone who suffers a concussion, especially young boys under the age of 18. If they suffer a second concussion before their brain has healed, it's called secondary impact syndrome, and it is devastating and can be fatal in a high percentage of cases. So when you have a situation where you're coaching soccer, you're coaching football, and you have a suspected concussion, you really have to pull the kids out of the game. You cannot risk. People don't understand. The kid's not going to want to come out of the game. They're going to want to stay in. That's normal. I played a lot of sports, and I don't want to come out when I had injuries. That's a normal thing for an athlete, but the coaches and the parents and the adults who are responsible have to understand that there are things that are a lot more important than this game.
Yes.
And you got to get the kid out if there's a potential of a concussion, because if they did suffer a concussion and you leave them in and they suffer a second one, which will be very easy when their brain is swelling and they're already dealing with the initial concussion, it can be fatal. I mean, statistically, don't quote me on this, but I think it was 50% of the time.
Wow.
It's fatal for under the age of 18. It's insane, and it can cause permanent, lifelong deficits, all to keep them in the game for the second half to win some game that probably they won't remember 20 years from now. So it's so important to get the word out, and
it is, because
we've been talking about starting some sort of foundation that that can help educate coaches and sports leagues and things like that. And you see it in the news with the Dolphins quarterback Tua. I can never pronounce his last name correctly, but he's had multiple concussions. And last season, I think it was last season, he had 2 within 2 weeks because they didn't properly, even in the NFL, they didn't properly diagnose the first one. They let him play the next week. And there's video all over the internet of him getting that second concussion within the week, and his arms go up in the air and are rigid, and it's terrible. It's really sad to watch. And that was a week later. So imagine if it happens in the same game. It's literally deadly. So it's just so important to understand concussions and to make sure coaches and trainers and everybody is watching for them and pulling kids out of the game if they suspect one in any way.
Absolutely. And, a difference is in the NFL, I know they're going after, that it's a whole money thing. They're being paid to be out there and all that, and there's so many different perspectives of why they would be put back in, right? And then you got your little league and football players that are really out there just because they want to win, and they're
Right.
not getting paid. It's a daddy ball, if you will, sometimes. And then you got that's what's crazy, and that's where what you're doing is awesome, because you're right. I have kids that are playing competitive sports, and you see it in these people that are just watching the game and how competitive they can get.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's just it's criminal to think that they're messing with people's lives like that just over a win.
Yeah, anytime you see any sort of blow to the head, even if they're not exhibiting symptoms, to me, you sit them for the rest of the
You
game.
have to.
You just have to. It's just not worth it.
Pun intended, it's a no-brainer.
Right. Yeah.
If you want them to have a brain, get them out of
You
there.
got to get them out, yeah.
Yeah, so very viable what you're doing. Awesome work, and I will
thank you.
support that charity if they definitely are.
Yeah, I'll let you know. And actually, this would be a good connection
Yes.
to be able to talk to people about the advanced imaging too. A good way to get the word out.
100%.
So we're working on that now. We're working on that and a brain injury clinic in San Diego because there really isn't a lot of resources for brain injuries in San Diego. There are some in LA. There are some here, but not as much as we would like.
It's not as relevant.
Yeah, we've been talking about trying to get that going and get that started. So I'll definitely
Absolutely
let you know if we get that going.
Because you just named it. It's one thing to get the diagnostic and to support the TBI, but then it's like, okay, now
What do you do now? Right.
Right. And so your experience with that is, and as we know, that it's not a cookie cutter injury. So just because they have a TBI doesn't mean all just the same thing. So it all depends on the symptoms that they're having.
Yeah.
So even treatments out here, it's tough, right? And so we've got to get even more of those providers understanding that is needed here.
Yeah, not all neurologists are created equally. Some of them just tell you to come back in 4 weeks and it'll be okay, and they'll do that for years.
Yeah.
And some of them are very passionate about brain injuries and understanding what happened and getting the right treatment, and so it's so important you get to the right doctor.
The right doctor. Yes, neurologists aren't always specialized in TBI.
Right.
But we all think that that's the first person we go to, right? When we have a head injury. Yes, it makes sense. But if they aren't specialized in TBI, it could send you down the wrong road, actually. Because what we have seen on many cases is, it's, their PTSD is going. And, pretty much any person that's involved in a car wreck or, a horrible incident is going to have PTSD regardless. But then you have a brain injury on top of that. What we were seeing is, reports of, literally saying that they hit their head, but then they're not recommending any kind of like brain MRI or neuropsych type treatment. It's more for the, sending them down for a PTSD road. And now we're getting into, okay, are we looking for a psychiatrist for meds or, or that kind of a thing? And now we have gone down a whole other avenue that's not good.
Yeah, the system's just not set up for TBIs, because in the emergency room, they're not there to treat TBIs. They just want to triage and make sure you can be discharged to your primary care.
Right.
So they'll do a CT scan. That's the best you're getting in the ER. You're not even getting a regular MRI.
Right. Which makes sense, because it isn't life-threatening, right?
They just want to check, do you have a brain bleed? If not, once they can discharge you, they discharge you. Then you go to your primary care, who may be a great doctor, but maybe doesn't specialize in brains or know a lot about brain injuries. And so then you go there 3 or 4 times. Maybe you finally get a referral to a neurologist. You may be 2 months out now from the injury. And then what neurologist are you getting? Are you getting one that specializes in brain injuries? Or are you getting one that specializes in nerves? Because a lot of neurologists deal with electrodiagnostic testing of nerves, and that's their specialty. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Sure.
But it may lead a brain injured patient down a road where they're not going to get the treatment they need to recover.
Right. right. So yes, again, highlighting the fact that we want to get them treated as soon as possible with the right people. Even with TBI analytics, when there is not a neurologist or even a primary care physician looking at the TBI, we even have just even a general surgeon who can do a telehealth call to document what's going on, and to stay in his lane, he will write a recommendation for a brain MRI. Yeah, you're reporting symptoms of a brain injury.
Right.
You need to go get a brain MRI. And I think even people hesitate to go that direction to get that recommendation. But at the end of the day, these people need to get on that path of finding their own treatment. So if it takes even just a telehealth call with a doctor like that to get there, by all means, I would recommend.
Whatever you can do to get there.
Right. So not always does it have to be a neurologist, and so it could even be a pain doctor that is treating the patient, or a chiropractor, or any of that. I know it's better litigated when you have more of an MD writing that order and absolutely helping this patient, but there are different ways that we can help. And so don't feel limited, if you will, when you don't know of a neurologist out there or what have you. So, and we also have, Brian here, who can help on maybe some people that do get it and know. So I certainly do. So we can always reach out to me to help with that. Well, Brian, thank you so much. How do we get a hold of you if somebody wants to reach out?
Yeah, you can go to Gomez. It's funny. I'm trying to getgomez.com. Yeah, we changed it. Yeah, it was the GomezFirm.com, which I think still gets you there. The GomezFirm.com, or you can go to getgomez.com.
Yes.
Or you can call me directly or email me directly, bmason@getgomez.
Perfect.
Or you can call me 619-614-1668.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I love it. See, I love that attorneys are willing to give out their information, because, a lot of them go, oh, you give your number out, to your clients? Well, of course.
They all have my cell phone. They can call or text me anytime. I'm available all the time.
Yes.
Yeah, of course. That's the way of the world.
Yeah, they're a human being.
Yeah.
That you're helping. So that's wonderful, Brian. Thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you for having me again. I really appreciate it and really enjoyed it.
We'll do it again.
All right, sounds good.
On the next case.
Yeah.
All right.